Alright guys, my last thing I have for you is all about something called synthetic division. Now if you ask any of your friends or your siblings or anyone who's taken a math class above Algebra 2, they'll tell you they really like synthetic division because it's a lot easier than a long division. It's much quicker and it's much cleaner because it actually avoids all the variables. So we use this when we are dividing polynomials by binomials, or if we're doing it by a polynomial divided by a polynomial. I'm sorry, no, that is a long division. So we're only going to use it when we do polynomials divided by binomials. And binomials means we have two terms, but the important thing, if you look right here, it says can only be used if you are dividing by a linear factor. Linear factor means that what we're dividing by, my x minus 1, my x plus 1, my x plus 2. Everything's already highlighted because this is our second take of this video, but we're just going to let that go. 4x plus 3, m minus 1. All of those things are linear terms because there's no exponent. It's like y equals mx plus b. It's just an x. There's no power for the x. It's just mx plus b. So when we're dividing these, the first thing we're going to need to think of is what we're dividing by. Rather than dividing by an x minus 1, we're going to take the opposite of this. Kind of like when we found x-intercepts if we were solving something. So if you picture solving this, x minus 1, okay, that's the same as me putting, if x minus 1 equals 0, I would add 1 to both sides, and you get positive 1. So when we're dividing for synthetic division, you're just going to take the opposite thing, really, of this term right here. So we're going to put a 1 there, because the opposite of negative 1 is 1. And you're just going to follow along how this looks for now. I'm going to put this thing right here. And from there, I'm going to bring down some coefficients. Now, remember, coefficients are the numbers attached to the variables. So I'm going to think of my x to the third term, because that's your highest exponent. We don't have an x squared there, but I'm still going to put something. I'm going to think of my x term and then my constant. I'm going to put a c there. The coefficient, this is not part of synthetic. This is just so I can keep track. The coefficient for my x to the third is a 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right here. The coefficient for your x squared term, we don't have one. That's a 0. Coefficient for your x term is a negative 2. And your constant is a negative 3. So remember, that was just the coefficients for each term here. And we didn't have an x squared, so we put a 0 there instead. So I'm going to start you off with that. Now, the first step is to take this first number, and we're just going to bring it down. Here's like my line, like when you add and subtract. We're going to bring that down. We're always going to be adding for synthetic division. So 2 and plus 0, I get a 2 right here. Now, this is where it starts to get weird. So I am going to now take my 2, which is down here. I'm going to multiply it by my number in here that we're kind of hiding off to the side. 2 times 1 gives me 2, and that 2 is just going to go right here. And then we add straight down again. 0 plus 2 gives me 2. And now I'm going to follow that same procedure again. 2 times my number to the side is a 2. And then negative 2 plus 2 gives me 0. And we'll go again. 0 times 1 gives me 0. Negative 3 plus 0 gives me negative 3. And now you're really done your synthetic division. So if you picture you have 2x to the third minus 2x minus 3, and you're dividing by x minus 1, you're dividing by an x. So when you divide, your powers are going to go down 1. So instead of 2x to the third, we're going to have 2x squared. Instead of negative 2x, it's going to go down to just a negative 2 or something along the lines of that. So now, I want you to keep in mind that we're going down a power for everything. So when I write this out with its exponent, or with its variables again, this is going to be a 2x, and instead of to the third, it went down to a squared. And this one right here, this 2, is going to go down to 2x. And this term right here is going to be your constant, so plus 0. And then this last thing right here is going to be your remainder. Always, the last thing is always your remainder. So my remainder, it's a minus 3, so I'm going to write this as plus negative 3. And remember, we never write a remainder just as R3. We're going to put it over x minus 1. And that's my final answer. Now, you probably want to put the 0 in there. So I'm going to rewrite it again to look like 2x squared plus 2x. And I'm just going to write plus negative 3 over x minus 1. And you'll leave it just like that. Okay, so it's definitely weird. Doesn't look like anything we've seen before. But let's try it again for number 2. Remember, always, if we're missing something, if we go right from x to the third and we skip to an x, you would have to put a 0 there. But it's already there for us for this one. But I think that will come up in, looks like it comes up in this one right here, in number 4. So you would have x to the third plus 0x squared minus 37x plus 84. Okay, so let's try it out for number 2. Let's see how we do. For number 2, I'm going to start off. I'm going to write it as we said. We take the opposite of this. This is a 1, so I'm going to put a negative 1 right here. And that's going to be what I keep off to the side. Now I take all my coefficients. So I take a 3, take a negative 4, I take a 2, and I take a negative 1. First step, bring this guy down. Put my bar in there. We're always adding. This is just a 3. Now we take the 3 and we multiply it by negative 1. And you get negative 3. We add straight down and you get negative 7. Take that 7, multiply by my negative 1. That gives me a positive 7. Add straight down and we get a 9. Take the 9, multiply by the negative 1 over here again. That gets me negative 9. Negative 1 and negative 9 gives me negative 10. You're done your synthetic division. We did all your division. You just got to throw out your final answer. So we started off with the x to the third. We're dividing by an x, which means everything's dropping down from x to the third to x squared. So we have 3x squared minus 7x because we go down a power plus 9. The last thing is my remainder. I'm going to write that as negative 10 over x plus 1. And that's your final answer. I have a feeling that we might want to see one more. If you don't need to see it, you're going to stop watching. If you do, I'm going to show you number 7. That's going to start out as I need to rewrite it. So I'm going to take the opposite of this thing. That's going to give me a 1 right here. From there, I'm going to write my coefficients. Now, you don't have an x squared. We have an m to the third, so my coefficient for that is just a 1. I don't have an x squared. I don't have an x. I do have a constant. So we have a lot of zeros in this one. Bring down your 1. I'm going to go kind of quick for this one. Bring down your 1. You get a 1 here. From here, we have 1 times 1 gives me 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 times 1 gives me 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 times 1 gives me 1. Negative 1 plus 1 gives me 0. Now, the last thing is a 0, which means we don't have a remainder, which is cool for us. The m to the third went down 1. So now this should be 1m squared plus 1m plus 1. I trust that you wouldn't write it like that. Again, no remainder. I'm going to write it as m to the second plus m plus 1. That's it. Final answer. Now, you could check your answer. If you multiply this thing by m minus 1, if you were to FOIL it out, I guarantee you would end up right where we started at m to the third minus 1. Again, check your answers on Schoology. Everything is on there. When I get back, we will go over all of this and make sure you guys are good. I'm also going to give you guys have access to an extra practice worksheet if you want to. Try to knock out these closure questions. Do your best. Feel free to message me on Schoology if you have